The 2010 historical action movie Robin Hood is based upon the medieval ballad of the renowned outlaw. The movie sets out how Robin Hood became an outlaw in the year 1199. But as entertaining as this movie is, how true to history is it? The movie opens in 1199 AD with the main character Robin Longstride serving as a common archer in the army of King Richard the Lionheart. A veteran of Richard's crusade, he now takes part in the siege of Challis Castle. Disillusioned and war-weary, he gives a frank but unflattering appraisal of the king's conduct when the king asks for it, and Robin and his comrades, Archer Allen, Will Scarlet and Soldier Little John, are locked in the stocks. After the king is killed during an attack on the castle, Robin and his comrades manage to free themselves and desert. They come across an ambush of the English Royal Guard by Godfrey, an English knight who has conspired with King Philip of France to assassinate King Richard. After chasing Godfrey away, Robin and his merry men take advantage of the situation by impersonating the dead English knights to return to England. Before they depart to sail across the channel, he promises a dying knight, Sir Robert Locksley, to return his sword to his father in Nottingham. This plot is loosely based upon history, as in March 1199 Richard was in Limousin suppressing a revolt by Viscount Aymar V of Limonges. He besieged the tiny and virtually unarmed castle at Challis. Some chroniclers claim that this was because a local peasant had uncovered a treasure trove of Roman gold. On the 26th March 1199, Richard was hit in the shoulder by a crossbow bolt, and the wound turned gangrenous. Richard asked to have the crossbowman brought before him, though according to some sources, the man turned out to be a boy. The boy said that Richard had killed his father and two brothers, and that he had intended to kill Richard in revenge. He expected to be executed, but as a final act of mercy, Richard forgave him, saying, "Live on, and by my bounty behold the light of day," before he ordered the boy to be freed and sent away with 100 shillings. Richard died on the 6th of April 1199 in the arms of his mother. Because of the nature of his death, it was later said that the lion by the ant was slain. According to one chronicler, Richard's last act of chivalry proved fruitless when the infamous mercenary Captain Mercadia had the boy flayed alive and hanged as soon as Richard died. Back in the movie, the party arrives at the Thames estuary. Robin must continue to assume the identity of Locksley to inform the royal family of King Richard's death. He witnesses the coronation of King John, who orders a collection of harsh new taxes. William Marshall, the Lord Chancellor since the days of John's father, opposes the new taxes and is relieved of his position by John. The new king dispatches Godfrey to the north to collect the taxes, unaware that Godfrey will instead use French troops to stir up unrest and prepare for King Philip to invade England. In secret, spies working for Marshall follow Godfrey's men and learn of the planned invasion of England. All that follows is fictional. What the movie misses out is that after Richard's death on the 6th of April 1199, there were two potential claimants to the Avigny throne. John, whose claim rested on being the sole surviving son of Henry II, and young Arthur I of Brittany, who held a claim as the son of John's elder brother, Geoffrey. Richard appears to have started to recognise John as his heir presumptive in the final years before his death, but the matter was not clear-cut, and medieval law gave little guidance as to how the competing claim should be decided, with Norman law favouring John as the only surviving son of Henry II, and the Avigny law favouring Arthur as the only son of Henry's elder son. The matter rapidly became an open conflict. At the time, John was supported by the bulk of the English and Norman nobility, and was crowned at Westminster Abbey. Arthur was supported by the majority of Britain, Maine and Angers nobles and received the support of Philip II of France, who remained committed to breaking up the Avigny territories on the continent. With Arthur's army pressing up the Loire Valley towards Angers and Philip's forces moving down to the valley towards Tours, John's continental empire was in danger of being cut in two. After his coronation, John moved south into France with military forces and adopted a defensive posture along the eastern and southern Normandy borders. Both sides paused to negotiate before the war recommenced. John's position was now stronger thanks to confirmation that the Counts Baldwin IX of Flanders and Reynold of Boulogne had renewed their anti-French alliance they had previously agreed with Richard. The powerful Angers nobleman William des Roches was persuaded to switch sides from Arthur to John. Suddenly, the balance seemed to be tipping away from Philip and Arthur in favour of John. Neither side was keen to continue the conflict, and following a papal truce, the two leaders met on January 1200 AD to negotiate possible terms for peace. In the movie, Robin and his companions head to Nottingham, where Locksley's elderly and blind father Sir Walter asks him to continue impersonating his son to prevent the crown from seizing the Locksley family lands. Locksley's widow, Lady Marian, is initially cold towards Robin, but warms to him when he and his men recover grain for the townsfolk to plant. The true character of Robin Hood is mostly considered by historians as fictional, with elements taken from real people. The earliest surviving text of a Robin Hood ballad is a 15th century Robin Hood and the Monk. This is preserved in a Cambridge University manuscript which was written after 1450 and contains many of the elements still associated with the legend, from the Nottingham setting to the bitter hatred between Robin and the local sheriff. As for the Sheriff of Nottingham, it is not certain who the sheriff character is based on. Nottingham's first sheriff, William Sadler and Thomas Lang, were appointed in 1449 when the city was divided into two parts. Maid Marian is not mentioned in the early medieval versions of the legend, but was the subject of at least two plays by 1600. Her history and circumstances are obscure, but she commanded high respect in Robin's circle for her courage and independence, as well as her beauty and loyalty. Friar Tuck also didn't actually appear in the original tales, but there is a friar, but he has no name. Friar Tuck was a real outlaw called Robert Stafford, who came from Sussex in the 15th century, and gradually his name was incorporated into the legend. Other minor inaccuracies are that during the period in which the film is set, rulers would not have been called Your Majesty, a term of address that was created in Tudor times. Earlier kings were addressed as Your Grace. Also, when Robin and his men are on the ship from France to England, they are drinking out of glass goblets. Glass was very expensive at that time and would never have been used on a ship. Instead, they would have had pewter or wooden drinking vessels. The movie builds to the climactic battle on the beach against the French, and this is where the movie is most unlike history. The French are using amphibious vehicles to get their troops onto the shore. This technology was way beyond anything that medieval people had. The earliest amphibious vehicle was built in 1787. Initially, the English forces are on top of the cliffs, watching the French land. They have archers and open fire on them, but then they decide to send their troops down to the beach to fight. This just doesn't make any sense. With the English up on the cliffs, the French can do nothing except take casualties until they can somehow get up the cliffs. But sending troops down to the beach means that the archers need to stop firing to avoid hitting the English soldiers. So the English forces throw away their advantage for no reason at all. Another fact is that Robin Hood is an archer who gained his experience on crusade. There is no evidence that he has any military experience beyond that. He has only ever been described as a lowly foot soldier, and certainly not a knight as the movie portrays, so it makes no sense for him to have been given command of the English forces. The English charge on the beach is also a point of interest. There's no line of horses to allow a lance charge to have a massed impact. Medieval knights of the late 12th century were highly trained to charge as a solid unit, unlike the knights in the movie. The movie ends with King John breaking his promise to sign the charter and declares Robin an outlaw to be hunted throughout the kingdom. The Sheriff of Nottingham announces the decree, and Robin and his men flee to Sherwood Forest with the orphans of Nottingham. Marion narrates their new life in the Green Wood, noting that they live in equality as they right the many wrongs in the kingdom of King John. The origins of the legend of Robin Hood, as well as the historical contents, have been debated for centuries. There are numerous references to historical figures with similar names that have been proposed as possible evidences of his existence, some dating back to the late 12th century. At least 8 plausible origins to the story have been suggested by historians and folklorists, including suggestions that Robin Hood was a stock alias used by or in reference to bandits.